The day Carolina never thought would come is finally just around the corner. After surviving conspiracies surrounding the imperial succession, the storm in her life has finally begun to calm. With her engagement to Prince Edward officially announced throughout the empire, every corner of the palace is now busy preparing for the royal wedding. As the big day draws ever closer, her personal maid, Marisa, reviews the packed schedule, beginning with a wedding planning meeting alongside Prince Edward before the final fitting of Carolina's bridal gown. Glancing at the clock, Carolina realizes it's already time, meaning Edward should be arriving at any moment. A gentle knock soon echoes through the room as Prince Edward arrives to begin their wedding planning. The moment Carolina greets him with formal etiquette, Edward immediately stops her, insisting there's no need for such distant formalities between them before getting straight to the meeting. Everything about the ceremony will follow tradition, except for one painful detail. Duke Raymond won't be able to attend the wedding. Accepting it with quiet resignation, Carolina calmly offers to walk down the aisle alone. But Edward refuses without a second thought. There's no way he'd let his bride face such a lonely moment by herself while he walked beside his own family. Instead, he declares they'll make their entrance together, leaving Carolina deeply touched by yet another glimpse of the kindness hidden behind the empire's feared bloodthirsty prince. The next stop is the wedding dress fitting, and Carolina is left speechless the moment she lays eyes on the breathtaking gown. Believing it's almost too beautiful to wear, she nervously changes into it before stepping in front of Empress Vanessa to hear her opinion. But the Empress's very first words, "This won't do," instantly shatter Carolina's confidence, making her assume the dress simply doesn't suit someone like her. To her surprise, however, Vanessa isn't criticizing Carolina at all. She's criticizing the dress for not doing Carolina justice. Noticing her slender waist and graceful figure, the Empress immediately orders several alterations, adjusting the fit, removing unnecessary decorations, and refining the lace to better highlight Carolina's natural beauty. Overwhelmed by the attention, Carolina timidly insists the dress is already more than perfect, but Vanessa is determined to make sure her future daughter-in-law looks nothing less than breathtaking on the day of her wedding. Before the fitting could come to an end, an attendant announces Prince Edward's arrival and asks permission for him to enter. Already flustered from being the center of attention, Carolina grows even more embarrassed as her future husband walks into the room. Seizing the opportunity, Empress Vanessa proudly asks Edward what he thinks of the bride. Without the slightest hesitation, his eyes meet Carolina's, and he simply replies that she's beautiful. At last, the long-awaited wedding day finally arrives. As Carolina waits quietly for the ceremony to begin, she can't hide her nervousness. Knowing the royal wedding will be broadcast throughout the entire empire using magical devices, the thought of making even the smallest mistake leaves her overwhelmed with anxiety. Sensing her unease, Marisa gently reminds her of all the effort she's poured into preparing for this day and reassures her that everything will be fine. Encouraged by her words, Carolina gathers her courage as it's finally time to head toward the ceremony. Waiting for her there is Prince Edward, and the moment he sees his bride, he can't take his eyes off her. Rather than hiding his feelings, he openly tells Carolina she looks so breathtaking that he almost doesn't want anyone else to see her. The unexpected compliment instantly leaves Carolina blushing. Though she brushes it off as simple flattery, deep down, those heartfelt words fill her with a happiness she can no longer deny. Before long, the grand ceremony finally begins. Hand in hand, Edward and Carolina make their entrance into the magnificent hall, where thunderous applause and heartfelt congratulations greet the newlyweds from every direction. To everyone watching, they truly look like a match made in heaven. As Carolina takes in the unforgettable moment she's once believed would never come, her heart fills with happiness. The only thing missing from her perfect wedding is the presence of her father, a small regret that quietly lingers amid one of the happiest days of her life. Standing before the Pope, the couple finally reaches the most important moment of the ceremony. As Edward and Carolina exchange their heartfelt vows, they promise to remain by each other's side through every joy and hardship that lies ahead. With their vows complete, Edward gently takes Carolina's hand and slips the wedding ring onto her finger, making the marriage official. Then comes the moment everyone has been waiting for. As Edward slowly lifts her veil and leans in to seal their vows with a kiss, Carolina experiences her very first kiss. A moment so warm and filled with affection that, to her, it tastes like happiness itself. With the wedding ceremony behind them, Carolina officially begins her new life as the Empire's princess. Marisa escorts her to the luxurious Emerald Palace, which will now serve as her new residence. One look inside leaves Carolina completely speechless, and when Marisa casually mentions that the furniture alone is valuable enough to buy a small country, Carolina can hardly believe her ears. Before she has time to take it all in, Prince Edward arrives with Theodore to share some unexpected news. Their honeymoon is already scheduled to begin in just 3 days. Caught completely off guard, Carolina barely has time to process the announcement before Theodore proudly reveals he has already arranged everything. explaining that the newlyweds must leave quickly to maintain appearances despite Edward's demanding duties with the Pyreborn Knights. Their destination will be Count Kissinger's estate, where they'll spend a week together, traveling there using Theodore's incredibly rare teleportation magic. Although the whirlwind of surprises leaves Carolina overwhelmed, she quickly accepts her new plans, unaware that this honeymoon is about to become far more eventful than she ever imagined. No sooner do Edward and Theodore leave than the room falls silent again. Joking that the two had swept through like a storm, Carolina is caught off guard by another surprise when Marisa reveals that Count Kissinger's estate, their honeymoon destination, is actually her family home. Feeling guilty for imposing on her loyal maid with such short notice, Carolina insists on finding a way to thank her. But when she asks what Marisa likes, the usually composed maid quietly admits she enjoys reading Cinderella. The unexpected answer, combined with the sadness lingering in Marisa's eyes, immediately catches Carolina's attention. Although Marisa brushes off her concern with a gentle smile and insists that Carolina's gratitude is more than enough, it's clear she's hiding feelings she doesn't want anyone else to see. 3 days pass in the blink of an eye, and the newlyweds set off on their honeymoon. With a single spell, Theodore's advanced teleportation magic instantly transports everyone to Count Kissinger's estate. As Carolina opens her eyes, she's greeted by a breathtaking landscape unlike anything she has ever seen. Edward explains that the estate is famous for being the most beautiful residence in the entire northeastern region, and seeing Carolina's delighted reaction brings a quiet smile to his face. Before long, the group is warmly welcomed by Count Kissinger himself, whose gentle and gracious demeanor immediately leaves a good impression on Carolina. Yet amid the warm reception, one small detail refuses to escape her notice. While everyone else seems happy to be there, Marisa's expression remains unusually distant, making Carolina wonder why returning to her own family home brings her so little joy. Even during their honeymoon, Carolina can't stop thinking about Marisa's unusual behavior. While sharing a peaceful afternoon tea with Edward, her thoughts remain fixed on the sadness she noticed in her maid's eyes. Before long, Edward apologizes, explaining that duty has called once again and he must attend a meeting with Theodore, even on their honeymoon. Carolina reassures him that she doesn't mind and decides to spend the time exploring the estate's beautiful gardens instead. Not wanting to leave anything to chance, Edward immediately arranges for Owen to accompany her as a bodyguard, setting the stage for an unexpected encounter that is about to shatter the estate's peaceful atmosphere. As evening falls, Carolina takes a quiet stroll through the estate's gardens with Owen standing guard at her side. Still unable to stop thinking about Marisa, she asks if he knows why her maid has seemed so unhappy ever since they arrived. Owen admits he doesn't know the full story, but reveals that Marisa has never gotten along with her older sister, Lady Marielle, hinting that there's far more to the family's history than meets the eye. Just as he's about to reveal another important detail, their conversation is abruptly cut short by loud shouting echoing from the mansion. Curious about the sudden commotion, Carolina and Owen immediately head over to see what's happening. The source of the commotion soon reveals itself. A young woman named Marielle is causing a scene, demanding that the servants bring Marisa and Lord Theodore to her immediately. The moment Carolina and Owen arrive, Marielle barely acknowledges them. But as soon as Prince Edward appears, her entire demeanor changes. Overjoyed to see him, she reveals that she rushed home the instant she learned he would be staying at the estate, before eagerly asking to meet Theodore as well. Edward, however, responds with icy indifference. Having no patience for her obsession, he bluntly refuses to let her anywhere near Theodore and orders her to leave at once. Even after trying to protest, Marielle is silenced when Count Kissinger rushes over, apologizes to the royal couple for the disturbance, and immediately orders his daughter back to her room, leaving Carolina even more puzzled by the strange encounter. Seeing Carolina's confusion, Theodore steps forward to explain the situation. He reveals that the woman causing the disturbance was Lady Marielle, the second daughter of House Kissinger and Marisa's older sister, who has long harbored a one-sided grudge against her. Although Marielle was supposed to be away during their stay, she somehow learned they were at the estate and returned. Then Theodore drops an even bigger surprise. Marielle isn't just Marisa's sister. She's also his former fiancée, leaving Carolina completely stunned. Later that night, the truth behind Theodore's complicated relationship with the Kissinger family finally comes to light. When Carolina asks why he was ever engaged to Marielle, Theodore reveals that the arrangement had nothing to do with love. It was a calculated decision made for the sake of the Pyreborn Knights. Since many nobles refused to supply an order that accepted commoners, House Kissinger offered a solution: discounted resources in exchange for a marriage alliance. Theodore accepted without hesitation, seeing it as the best way to support his men. But what began as a practical agreement soon turned into a nightmare. Marielle's growing obsession with him became so disruptive that it started interfering with his duties, forcing him to end the engagement. He later chose Marisa as his fiancée instead, but that decision only fueled Marielle's hatred toward her younger sister. Carrying the weight of those consequences, Theodore quietly admits that he believes everything that happened afterward was his fault. But before Theodore can continue blaming himself, Marisa quietly speaks up. She insists none of it was his fault, revealing that her sisters had despised her long before the broken engagement. Through painful memories, Carolina sees the truth for herself. Marielle constantly humiliated her, even publicly pouring tea over her while others mocked her appearance. The hatred only grew worse after Theodore chose Marisa as his fiancée instead. Furious at losing him, Marielle lashed out and even slapped her younger sister, accusing her of stealing the man who was never hers to begin with. Unable to endure the abuse any longer, Marisa chose to leave her family behind and become a maid, believing distance was the only way to escape. Even so, she quietly claims she has no regrets. But Carolina sees straight through the lie. Having suffered at the hands of her own family, she knows all too well that the wounds left by blood relatives are never so easily forgotten. The next morning, their peaceful tea gathering is abruptly interrupted by an urgent report of monsters appearing in the western forest. Without hesitation, Edward and Theodore rush off to investigate, while Owen escorts Carolina to safety. But before they can leave the estate, Marielle suddenly emerges from the bushes and reveals the disturbing truth. The monster sighting was nothing more than a scheme to separate Theodore from Prince Edward. Seizing the opportunity, she immediately resumes her relentless attacks on Marisa, shamelessly accusing her of stealing Theodore away and insisting she was never worthy of becoming his fiancée. Then, determined to gain Carolina's support, Marielle boldly demands to know whether the crown princess agrees with her accusations. As Marielle continues hurling accusations, Carolina notices something she can no longer ignore. The usually calm and composed Marisa is quietly trembling, enduring her sister's cruelty in silence. Realizing how long she's suffered, Carolina makes up her mind. She calmly asks Owen to step aside before facing Marielle herself. Turning Marielle's own words against her, Carolina points out that the very person questioning Marisa's character is the same one who fabricated a false monster report and constantly causes trouble for those around her. Someone who behaves that way has no right to judge anyone else. She then declares that Marisa is a loyal and precious maid whom she trusts completely and firmly warns Marielle that she will never tolerate anyone insulting her again, leaving Marisa deeply moved by Carolina's unwavering support. Humiliated by Carolina's words, Marielle completely loses her composure and lashes out, insulting both Carolina and Prince Edward with a stream of cruel remarks. Before anyone else can react, Marisa steps forward and delivers a sharp slap across her sister's face, finally refusing to stay silent as she condemns Marielle for insulting the crown princess. Enraged, Marielle tries to strike back, but a blazing wall of flames suddenly erupts between them. Edward has returned. Consumed by fury, he warns Marielle that she may insult him all she wants, but he will never forgive anyone who dares to disrespect Carolina. Theodore then delivers the final blow, reminding Marielle that insulting a member of the imperial family is a grave offense before coldly admitting he has no regrets about ending their engagement. Declaring he could never marry someone so disgraceful, he orders Marielle to be taken away, bringing her arrogant outburst to a humiliating end. Later, while walking through the palace halls, Marisa quietly apologizes for the trouble her sister caused, but Carolina gently stops her, insisting she has nothing to apologize for. If anything, she's the one who deserves thanks for having the courage to stand up to Marielle when it mattered most. Deeply moved, Marisa can't help but ask the question that's been weighing on her heart. Why would the crown princess go so far to defend a mere maid? Carolina's answer is simple yet deeply personal. Having once endured the pain of being abandoned by everyone around her, she knows exactly how lonely it feels when no one reaches out a hand. That's why she wanted to become the person she herself once needed. Those words finally break through Marisa's carefully guarded heart. She confesses that the reason she cherished Cinderella wasn't because of the fairy tale itself, but because she had always dreamed that, one day, someone would rescue her from the misery inflicted by her own family. Unlike Cinderella, however, she believed no such miracle would ever come for her. Yet after everything Carolina had done, Marisa realizes that the salvation she'd spent her entire life longing for had finally found her, bringing years of silent suffering to an end. Not long afterward, Count Kissinger makes the difficult decision to send Marielle to a convent. Though it serves as punishment for her actions, it is also a father's final act of compassion, sparing her from far more severe charges for insulting the imperial family and obstructing the Pyreborn Knights. In the end, Marielle's life is consumed by the very jealousy she held toward her own sister, making her as tragic as she is misguided. Meanwhile, back in the kingdom of Celestia, Flora's worst fears begin to take shape. On the eve of the second saintly trial, she fails to purify even a simple vase of muddy water, proving that her holy power has weakened beyond what she can hide. As she pieces everything together, the timing of Carolina's departure and the growing wave of disasters spreading across the kingdom, an unsettling realization begins to take hold. The answer she's been refusing to accept may have been standing before her all along. And somehow, it all points back to Carolina. Back at the Kissinger estate, Theodore catches Carolina off guard with unexpected news. Since she's already 16, it's finally time for her mandatory magical aptitude re-examination. Carolina calmly agrees, assuming the test will be scheduled for a later date. Instead, Theodore reveals that everything is already prepared, and she'll be taking the exam tomorrow. The shocking announcement leaves Carolina speechless, ending the episode with a suspenseful tease for what's to come.